What's up, everybody? You can call me Fallow. I wanted to talk a bit about the UK ruling that's been announced recently that trans women are not women. So let's go through some facts, and then I'll share my own opinion on that. So this is a BBC article written by Ben Hatton. UK's highest court says legal definition of woman is based on biological sex. The Supreme Court has ruled that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex, in a decision which could have far-reaching implications for those who can access single-sex services and spaces. I just want to point out here, I don't know how biased the BBC is. From what I understand, it's very left-leaning, so I'll try and weed through some stuff that I think is a little biased in one direction or another. It came about after the Scottish government included transgender women in quotas to ensure gender balance on public sector boards. Campaign group for Women's Scotland argued that sex-based protections should only apply to people born female. I don't know if that's their exact wording, but in my opinion, I think any sort of sex-based protection should apply to the relevant sex. But if we're talking about, like, the female sex, then yeah, obviously it should only apply to females. The judges were tasked with deciding on the correct interpretation of sex and woman in the main piece of legislation setting out sex-based legal protections. Specifically, they ruled that the definition of sex as used in the Equality Act 2010 is binary and decided by biology. A person who is not born as a biological female cannot obtain the legal protections the Act affords to women by changing their gender with a gender recognition certificate. It's important to note that the Act still provides transgender people with protections against discrimination, and that the judges said it was not their place to weigh in on those definitions in the wider public debate. Okay, I'm glad that he included that. Ah, yes. India Willoughby. Transgender rights died in the UK today, writes India Willoughby. You know, okay, just to clarify, I am Fallow, that's not my real name, but it is what I'm going by while I'm faceless on here. And I am a transsexual man, meaning I was born female, and I present myself to the world and live as well as one can, as though I am a man. And so I guess you could say I've got a bit of a dog in this fight. I do not associate myself with the transgender community. I am not part of that, but by virtue of medical and social transition, I am in fact a transsexual. Let's see what India Willoughby has to say. Oh, well, first of all, she says, I believe today was the day that transgender rights in the UK died. So that's the thing. I'm sure you've heard it before. What rights does everyone else have that trans people don't? I mean, if we think in like the UK, the US, Australia, not countries that are hostile towards trans and gay people, what rights do we not have that everyone else seems to? Because the right to go into a specific bathroom, it's not a right. It's like, you can't show up at my house and want to use one bathroom and I tell you, no, don't use that one. You can't throw a fit and say you're removing my rights to use that bathroom. You don't even have a right to go to any public bathroom. It's not a right, it's a privilege. So there's that. Broadcaster and trans campaigner India Willoughby says her heart is broken following this morning's Supreme Court ruling. In an opinion piece for the Metro, Willoughby writes that she was, quote, numb in shock after listening to a judge, quote, effectively strip me of my rights as a woman under the Equality Act. Telling me and others like me that we are not women is a historical injustice, and the celebrations of anti-trans voices today prove to me that I am losing protections, she adds. Willoughby says the judgment is horrible and utterly degrading, and has left trans people unsure of where they stand in law. From what I can tell, I don't know if you can tell by how I sound, I'm not disguising my voice in any way, but I am not from the UK, I do not live there, but from what I can tell, it's just legally defining woman. So this will apply to things like prisons, which they've had an issue with, and it will apply to, say, like women's shelters, and anywhere that sex is an important aspect, that's where it will apply, as far as I know. I've always been a woman, and I always will be a woman. I had to fight for it, and nobody will ever take that away from me. Got one question for you, India. What is a woman? I can answer that. A woman's an adult human female. I, as someone who has socially and medically transitioned to live my life as though I am a man, am more of a woman than India Willoughby will ever be, because I am an adult human female. So there's that. I think Blair White said it once, that she sees trans women as a subcategory of men or something like that. I completely agree. My body is still female. I've had a few modifications to it. India Willoughby, you were born male, you are not a woman. I'm sorry, you are a trans woman, if that's what we would like to call you. And in certain social aspects, absolutely, there's really no point in differentiating. But, there's a reason we have that qualifier there, trans woman versus woman. I mean, let's be honest, if Willoughby's always been a woman, then, well, why transition? Obviously, you've got some people who are pretty excited. J.K. Rowling's a great example. She's become kind of known throughout the years as being a quote-unquote TERF, or trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Let's see what she has to say. The court clarified that UK women have sex-based rights with you and your fellow activists," she's talking to Katie Montgomery, who I guess is a trans woman, "fellow activist meltdowns are laying bare what has been obvious to a lot of us for years. When you say equality, you mean women have no right under any circumstances to draw boundaries that exclude men." I have kind of come to agree with that over the years, just because people have gotten way extreme, and it's been getting absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, this was a long time coming, this ruling. For years and years, if you ask, say, the old school trannies, it's been left alone, right? Like, someone would go into whatever bathroom they passed well enough to go into, I would like to emphasize that, or, like, be treated as whatever sex they were trying to pass as. And it wasn't that big of a deal, because you didn't have literal, just, like, straight men who are trying to look no different than that, forcing their way into women's spaces. It had to come to this, or it was gonna go somewhere worse. Winners of the UK Supreme Court today: women and girls, including trans-identified women, continue to benefit from maternity rights, etc. By trans-identified women, I think she's talking about trans men, or, females who identify as trans. Gay people, freedom of speech, freedom of association, those at risk of discrimination for a belief in the material reality of sex. The fact that so many UK trans activists are shrieking about injustice says it all. You never had the rights you claim you've lost. You had demands. See, that's what I'm saying. You never had the rights you claim you've lost. I guess I don't know exactly what she's saying, but everything I can tell when it comes to, like I said, trans rights. Yeah, well, so far I have yet to see a single right, like the right to own land. But, you think about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Think of, like, Thomas Jefferson. Trans people are not being murdered for being trans. Trans people are allowed to say whatever they want. They're allowed to. You can't be kicked out of a neighborhood just because you're trans, or you can't be fired from wherever you're working just because you're trans. The pursuit of happiness, right? You are allowed to pursue medical transition, especially as an adult, which is the only thing I would advocate for. If that's what makes you happy, you're allowed to own things. You're allowed to get married, etc., etc. These are not being withheld from you. Being on a dating app exclusively for the opposite sex is not a right. Being in the bathroom for the opposite sex is not a right. Being in sports for the opposite sex, not a right. Anyway, this is Alexis Blake. She is someone that I like to watch quite a bit. I think she has very reasonable opinions and takes on a lot of things. She is a trans woman, so here she has a couple of YouTube shorts about the ruling. So I'm going to respond to those real quick.
Trans women are now not legally recognised as a woman. I'm a trans woman and I want to talk about it, if that's okay. This new law isn't going to protect or help anyone.
This new law isn't going to protect or help anyone. Why not? I want to know. I think it will. Let's see what else she has to say before I get more into it.
People can now stop and say to you, "You don't look like a woman to me. Are you a biological man?" Women are going to have that.
People are going to stop masculine-looking women in the bath and say, "You don't look like a woman to me." Now, I have heard of that happening. Obviously, I've never seen it myself. I pass well enough that I use the men's room. I frankly don't use the women's because it makes people uncomfortable. Remember, I started using the men's room more exclusively when I started getting kind of glares and weird looks from women. It's true that there might be a case here and there, especially when it may say like butch lesbians or particularly masculine tomboys or even D-trans women, where they are stopped and challenged. And, at that point, I don't think that's going to be a huge thing. It's like a trolley problem, right? We look at the comfort of the few versus the comfort of the many. Personally, in this case, I go with the many.
A man doesn't have to put on a dress and a wig to go into a woman's space and do something bad. They can do it anyway. If you don't know what goes into transition, it's not just a switch that we flip. I had to be legally diagnosed with gender dysphoria. I had to go through a psychological evaluation. I have had 8 surgeries. I had to prove myself time and time again.
A man doesn't have to put on a dress and a wig to go into a woman's space. Yeah, that's true, but it is a lot easier to get away with things. I remember back when I was on Tumblr a lot, and there was the whole discussion of fake trans versus real trans, etc., etc. Big discussion, especially around predatory, quote-unquote, trans women, was, someone wouldn't go through hormones and surgeries and all that just to prey on women. Yeah, they would. And frankly, nowadays, they don't even need to. Ever since the culture has changed to, you're trans if you say you're trans, you see a lot of balding men with beer guts and beards and voices deeper than mine going, "Yeah, I'm a woman, you have to treat me like that." And frankly, it's ridiculous. And a lot of people will stand up for them. "Yeah, that's a beautiful woman. Why are you saying she's not?" So, it's true, Alexis, men don't have to do that. They could force their way in. But think about it like this. Guy walks into a bathroom and is stopped by anyone, a woman, another man, multiple people, and says, "Whoa, what are you doing in there?" And the guy's like, "I just want to use the bathroom." "Well, you can't, you're a dude." "Well, no, I'm a trans woman." "Oh, okay, well, okay, do whatever you want."
Excuse me, ma'am. No porn at the bar.
Oh, it's okay. I'm transgender.
Oh, I had no idea. Do whatever you want all the time.
There is that societal expectation. Just to reiterate, don't have to, but it does make it a lot easier.
I get married this summer. Sorry to make it about me, but I get married this summer. And I don't know if that means I'm getting legally married as a man or a woman, which really sucks.
I just want to say congratulations to Alexis. Like I said, I've been following her channel for a good minute. I'm excited for her to get married. Seems like such a wonderful gal. I also don't know if this will affect her status as being her as a woman married to a man, or if they'll be listed as two men, or maybe if she's even a trans woman married to a man. I don't know. I've heard that it won't affect stuff like that, but I can't really back that up. At the end of the day, I guess I can't say doesn't matter, because as silly as it seems, sometimes it can be very dysphoria triggering to see yourself listed in like official documentation and stuff as the sex you were born as rather than the one you're trying to present yourself as. I do get that, but I mean, it doesn't mean she wouldn't be allowed to wear a dress or makeup and have her nails all pretty and, you know, present herself as a woman at the wedding. It shouldn't mean that. She would still be able to be the bride and everything. It would most likely just come down to documentation.
Also, something else I want to point out, they want us to use the toilets that aligns with our biological sex. So trans men, women who transition to men, look very much like men. Beards, you would never know. So that means they should then use the women's toilet, which means men can just walk in and say, I'm a trans man. I was born a woman. I should have been here.
So I do want to address that. And this one is very nuanced. It's not black and white. Not for the people saying, what about trans men? They all pass. And the people saying none of them pass, you can always tell. It's not that black and white. There are definitely indicators one way or the other. And it is a lot harder for trans women to pass. That's true. It is a lot easier for trans men to pass. But at the end of the day, there are significant differences. Yes, there definitely are trans men who you look at them and go, oh, whoa, I could never tell. Especially if you're just seeing their top half. But I mean, let's face it, especially if a female transitioned after puberty, especially significantly after puberty, which some of them do, hips are a huge factor. I'm on tonight, my hips don't lie. If you look at the hands, they're often a lot of times smaller, and not everyone is going to notice these differences, right? Especially people who aren't as, immersed in online stuff or the debates and the politics, etc. But if people are going to be screening other people for stuff like this, it's going to be easier to notice. I was at a music thing the other day, local music scene, watching a few local bands, and in one of them, there was a guy about 5'-ish, maybe 5'2", pretty short, had a beard. Frankly, if you're just looking at the top half, wouldn't notice, but the hips immediately gave away that this person was trans. And, I get dysphoria about my hips all the time, so I understand that probably sucks, but, reality is reality. And frankly, if a feminized man, a trans woman, is walking into the women's bathroom and appears female enough, no one's going to I won't say no one, because like I said, people are going to be more vigilant, people are going to be looking for those differences, but it's very unlikely. Someone like Alexis, for example, is very unlikely to be asked to leave. She just had facial feminization surgery especially, and she looks, if I didn't know, I wouldn't know. She looks female, she sounds female, she has a very feminine energy about her. Some of these people don't, I'll just say that right now. Even trans men, if there's like trans men that do 100% pass and look exactly like men, or, real men who walk in and say, oh no, I was born female, I'm just a trans man. If you're going in there and you're scaring women, it comes down to the comfort of the few versus the comfort of the many. At the end of the day, don't try and make people uncomfortable. How vile is that? To rile people up just to prove a point. How awful is that? And frankly, I know just from being immersed in the trans culture for a little bit, from what I've seen, if a real man walks into the women's bathroom, says he was born female, that he's a trans man, etc., like I said, those differences, you're probably gonna know.
It's not making anyone safer, and that's the most frustrating thing. It's gonna put more women and girls in danger. It's gonna put trans people in danger. This is not the end. It's just the start of what they're trying to do. It is discrimination. I understand some of the trans community haven't helped the situation. Fuel has been added to the fire by them. If you take anything away from this video, it's that this isn't benefiting women. It's not making women safer or girls safer. It's going to make them more prone to judgment and criticism from strangers, because if you don't look like what someone thinks a woman should be, you're going to get challenged on that. That's what this ultimately means for women.
I'm sorry, Alexis, and it is probably just some people. Like I said, I don't call myself part of the trans community. But unfortunately, a lot of the people who do are annoying at best and aggressive at worst. We look at Macho Ma'am. It's ma'am, the GameStop tranny, I think, is another nickname. You look at people like India Willoughby, for example. I am a woman, I always have been, blah, 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 blah. It is a few, yes, but they're very loud, they're very persistent, they are talking over people who do not have the same opinions and who are more respectful and would back off if asked to. That's part of the reason why I started this channel, is because I would like my voice to be heard. I tend to be pretty quiet about a lot of things. You know, like I said, I'm stealth, so it's not like I get involved in a lot of this. Anyway, sorry Alexis, it is a few people, but they are a loud and active few. That's what people are going to start thinking of when they hear trans.
A fire has been lit in me by this blatant discrimination against trans women. This really sucks. Bye.
A fire has been lit. Well, Alexis, I hope you stay well measured and calm. That's one thing I like about Alexis is, like I said, she tends to be very level-headed. I understand emotions run high right now. I'm sure a lot of people have been telling her that she's going to lose her rights and she's going to be attacked and that this is bad for her in every way possible. And maybe she came to those conclusions herself. Maybe nobody specifically told her that and she came to those conclusions herself. But I hope that when she's had time to think and calm down, that she will realize that it's not that black and white.
I'm a trans woman, and yesterday I spoke about the Supreme Court ruling that trans women are no longer legally recognised as women, and there's a few things that I want to clear up and talk about from the back end of that video. First things first, I got a lot of comments like this.
So let's read that comment there. You have to understand that biological women were having their rights taken away. The more that trans were having their rights met. That's a weird way to phrase that. It started to become ridiculous when we were no longer being called probably women. I don't know. Yeah, and that is a thing. That is a ridiculous thing because it used to just be like we look at the new words for women, right? Uterus haver or birthing person or whatever. If we think about it logically, you know, there are situations, let's say myself, where I would be counted as a woman and situations where I wouldn't. And that's like most of those situations where I wouldn't are social. So let's say we're in a choir, I sing baritone, so sometimes I'll go tenor, sometimes I'll go bass when it's a 4-part choir. And the choir director's talking and he wants the altos and the sopranos to practice part, and he goes, ladies, women, let's work on this part. Obviously that does not include me. But if we're looking at things like, oh, women should get a pap smear and check for cervical cancer, that does apply to me. And it does not hurt my feelings that it's saying women, because I can go, okay, most people, in fact, not even most people, all people, women are the ones with these body parts. I have these body parts. This includes me. So it really just comes down to it. And it became absolutely ridiculous when people started going, oh, but not all women have this, or not all people with this are women. That's stupid. If you really need like language to be tailored to you specifically, then frankly, get over yourself.
And I do try and look at everything from both points of view, and I cannot understand how this benefits women, because women can now be challenged if they are in fact women. If you're a biological woman and you are too tall, too broad, have a little bit of facial hair from PCOS, perhaps if you present a little bit masculine, you can be challenged in female-only spaces. If you are a biological woman, that's so insulting and that's not a positive thing.
You know, we did kind of go over this because she talked about it in her previous video, but a lot of those can be solved very quickly. Very, very, very rarely is it going to be, and in this case, it's mostly, from what I can think, mostly going to be detrans women that come across this. But for the most part, you know, you got a tomboy who goes in, looks masculine, and someone goes, hey, what are you doing in here? You don't look like a woman. And she goes, oh, I'm a woman. More likely than not, here, I'll tell you something. Voice is a huge thing when it comes to people subconsciously or even consciously determining someone's sex. So this person looks masculine or whatever, and she goes, no, I'm a woman. More likely than not, her voice is going to be maybe not even high pitched. She can have a low voice, but it's going to register as female. And if someone really wants to push that, then that's their fault. More likely than not, they'll go, oh, sorry, and back off.
The next thing I want to talk about is how this makes women potentially more unsafe. So trans men, biological women who transition to men, very masculine, beard, short hair, you would never know that they are biological women. This Supreme Court ruling indicates that we should use the toilets that align with our biological sex, our chromosomes, if you will. Trans men who look like men should now use the women's toilets. What is stopping bad men pretending to be trans men and going into these female-only spaces? It's not a good thing. It can really open the door to make things more unsafe for women.
There are trans men who pass very well. I'm not going to debate that. But again, at the end of the day, there's not an easy answer to that. There are going to be predatory men who walk into a woman's bathroom and say, oh no, I'm biologically female. I belong in here, and then do whatever. And that's disgusting. Here's the thing. Those same men who are doing that are the ones who would put on a wig and some lipstick and walk into the women's bathroom. bathroom, right? So it's not solving that. It's just giving it a different route to go. I will admit that. But saying that anyone who identifies as a woman should be able to go into the women's bathroom is not going to fix it either.
A lot of people contacted me about my gender recognition certificate. When I got my gender recognition certificate, which I had to do a lot for, I had to prove time and time again that I've been living as Alexis, living as a woman, presenting as a woman. I've gone through the whole transition XYZ. I am getting married legally as a woman because I have that for now. But we don't know what's going to happen next. And this is the other thing I'm trying to stress to people. If they can rule this, what else can they do? This is not just a one and done sort of situation. I do genuinely believe more things are going to come out of the back end of this, and what that is, I don't know.
Well, there you go, Alexis. Congratulations. You get to be legally recognized as a woman on your marriage certificate. I hope that didn't sound sarcastic. I wasn't trying to sound sarcastic. There is that thing, too. If they can legally take this away, what else can they legally take away? You can put that with anything. I mean, we talk about trans kids all the time. If they can consent to that, what else can they consent to? Etc., etc. So that's not really a good argument there either. And sometimes you have to take these steps in order to see what happens. Sometimes you have to go down the wrong path to know that it's the wrong path. And again, there's no easy answer to any of this. It's really not black and white, which I get is difficult. Like, I have a hard time thinking outside of black and white, I'm not gonna lie. And I realize I'm not the only one, but from what I can tell, this was the best decision. It's not a perfect decision, but it is the best one we have. Well, I say we, I'm not in the UK.
Thank you for everyone for your lovely comments. I understand where the concern comes from, but I just wanted to clear up why I think this is bad for women and bad for trans women. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
Here's a really good comment right here. Boiling this all down to bathroom access sickens me, actually. I genuinely think it makes light of the actual issues. Rapists in women's prisons, that has been a problem. Fetishists in breastfeeding groups and rape crisis centers. Men in women's sports, women being forced to call their rapist she in court. That actually infuriates me. Data in the justice system not being properly collected, so not only are you unable to look into crimes, but you can't adequately disperse funding. Bathrooms really are the least of it. I agree with that. When it comes to bathrooms, I mean, a social rule is, do you pass? Go ahead. There's no real way to actually enforce bathrooms. So it's kind of on your honor system, but there are a lot of things. There are a lot of bigger issues that do need to be focused on. I just want to reiterate, it's not a black and white issue. It's not something that has an easy answer, and I don't know if we'll ever find the perfect answer, but as of right now, this is the best one we got. Just want to leave with some closing thoughts. I support this decision. Again, I'm not in the UK, so that might seem like a silly thing, or even maybe a selfish thing to say, but from everything I can tell, it's the best decision that they could have come to, and I know there will be a few cases out there. It hurts women and trans women, but I hope those are few and far between. And I hope that when those do crop up, things can be worked around, that there can be some fine tuning made. So in short, good luck, Britain.